Hi everyone, my name is Lisa and welcome to my lesson on the importance of early healthy brain development. We're going to start out with a question. How much of the brain is developed in the first 5 years of life? What are your guys' thoughts? The answer is 90%, so very significant amount. This is an overview. We're going to go into each of them a little bit more in detail. But really, it's kind of sharing why it's important to have healthy brain development in the early years. In the early years, the brain goes through a rapid period of growth. Our brains are hardwired to learn, and it's harder to do that if they are not taken care of in healthy brains. The brain also, in the early years, has the highest impact or ability to impact and change. As we would guess, if you have a healthy brain, it lays a healthy foundation for much of your other development. And then it's very important to know that the brain develops from a bottom-up process, and so we will learn more about that coming up. So first of all, like I said, the brain develops very rapidly in the first 5 years. The graph on the left can show you kind of just a little bit of a visual of how the brain develops compared to the body. Again, it really develops 90% by 5, and then there's really a plateau versus the body that continues to go up as the person ages. On the right side, it shows you the amount of neural connections that are happening. As you can see from birth, even to the first 2 years, it's a significant amount. During this time of the first 5 years, at least 1 million new neural connections or synapses are made every single second. So there really isn't another time in an individual's life that connections are made at this speed and amount. So it's very important to be aware of this. Like I said, the brain is hardwired to learn, so the brain needs to be healthy and supported in order for the learning that it's hardwired to do can occur to the best of its ability. So every second of a person's life is spent learning, especially the first 5 years. You're taking in so much new information. In the first 5 years, the brain also has very high plasticity, which means its ability to learn new things is a lot easier and more than it is as you get older. On average, 3-year-olds have 2 times more synapses or connections than adults do. So this is just really showcasing that this is a key time to support the brain. The first 5 years on brain development is also extremely important due to the fact that it's easiest to change the brain based on experience. So the early years are the best opportunity for a child's brain to develop the connections that need to be healthy and capable adults. And these brain connections are made through everyday experiences. And based on the types of experiences a child has, kind of determines which connections are made and which can last really the individual's lifetime. So because of this, the amount of things such as interaction and quality care, relationship, and stimulation that occur in the early years really do make all the difference. The brain changes through rewiring, or as they say, it's a use dependent. So what that means is the more that a specific neural system is activated, the more the system changes to reflect that pattern of activation. So this rewiring occurs through experiences, and this use dependent is most impactful when those specific experiences are pattern and repetitive and consistent. So again, the graph kind of shows you the difference between the amount of effort that the change requires compared to the brain's actual ability to change in response to experiences. This is just another graph that kind of shows not only the brain's capacity to change, but also where as a society we put our most resources, energy, time, and money to change the brain. As you can see, it doesn't really occur when it's the natural time for it. It really is kind of backwards, and so that's something to be aware of as well, and something that we see in our society and programs a lot. The brain does lay a very healthy foundation for all health, behavior, and learning if the architecture of the brain is supported. A weak foundation can compromise the quality and strength of the brain architecture, which in turn impacts all areas of development, such as emotional well-being, social competence, and cognitive abilities. Again, when the quality and strength is compromised, this can have negative impacts that last all the way into adulthood, especially if the focus isn't on rewiring those specific negative effects. So again, a healthy brain is a healthy foundation for all areas of development. The brain is built over time from the bottom up. It begins at birth and continues into adulthood. It first starts with really simple neural connections and skills, such as serve and return, which I'll talk a little bit more, and like basic needs being met, followed by those that are more complex. And when you have healthy environments and relationships, the brain continues to move up. So the higher regions of the brain don't work properly if the lower brain regions are stuck. And so repair, which we're going to talk about, must start from the bottom up. One thing to know is, as you can see, kind of on the left, it really talks about like abstract thought and concrete thought, those things that are done associated with academics. So academic learning happens in the cortical brain, and it can't really occur if the bottom parts of the brain aren't also supported. So no matter how good the teacher is, if the proper development in the first two brain areas don't happen, the child will not be able to learn. So it's important for us to know that each child's brain architecture looks differently, and that's kind of why a one-size-fits-all teaching does not work. So now I'm going to talk about some unhealthy impacts. It's important to understand some of these so that we can be aware and buffer some of those impacts, or at least know how to best support the individual in those early years. So the first one is stress. Stress is good for our bodies if it's positive or tolerable stress. The issues come when it becomes toxic. And so toxic stress really does impair the development of neural connections, especially in the areas of the brain dedicated to higher order, because it's kind of stuck in that stress response, that fight or flight. Another negative impact on early healthy brain development are ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. These are negative experiences that an individual has in their life anytime from birth to 17. 45% of children in the U.S. have experienced at least one ACE, and 1 in 10 children nationally have 3 or more ACEs. And so this can really impact the brain development, and the biggest buffer is relationship, which we're going to learn more about. A little bit more, ACEs impact healthy brain development. Positive connections are not made, and the brain or learner becomes stuck in fight or flight. And so on the left, it kind of shows you how some extreme neglect and negative impacts on the brain physically alters the size and development of the brain. So there's an actual smaller brain in a child that has experienced things like those that are listed on the ACEs. And the more ACEs, the higher at risk the child is for lasting negative effects on health development and overall well-being, as shown on the right. Unhealthy brain development also has a great impact on child's development. So the more negative impacts on the brain architecture, such as ACEs and toxic stress, the greater chance of negatively impacting the child's overall development. And this graph kind of shows that there's a correlation between risk factors and overall development or the prevalence of developmental delays. So what can we do? Let's find out a little more in detail. The more awareness that we can have around the importance of early healthy brain development, the more we can focus on putting our energy and time towards what we know works for fostering healthy brain development. And we'll be able to kind of buffer the negative impacts on the development of the brain. Being aware of it makes us able to observe where our emotions and feelings are coming from, and that way we can kind of understand and observe behavior in a different lens, and kind of understand that there's a need behind the behavior. Another way we can support and foster early healthy brain development is to take the time to build relationship with any children that you work with and support. Making sure that we're meeting their needs and realizing that there's always a need or unmet need behind a behavior. And then again, of course, the relationships that do buffer are responsive, dependable, warm, nurturing. They have the most important influence on brain development. So in your own time, we're going to watch, you can watch the video on how to practice serve and return, but again, serve and return is kind of what you would think of as a game of tennis or volleyball. And it's through interactions of back and forth between yourself and a child that creates this healthy brain development. And then again, the steps that you can kind of take in your classroom or really in any relationship you have is this regulate, relate, reason. So the first step is to regulate, which is helping the child to regulate and calm their fight or flight responses. The change, like I said before, change in neural networks requires pattern repetitive activities. So you can incorporate regulation in your environments through things such as sensory and motor experiences, calming plays for kids, and kind of rhythmic or motor activities. Next would be the relation piece, is relating, connecting with the child through a tuned and sensitive relationship. Always remembering that it's connection over attention, knowing there's a need behind the behavior, making sure the child feels understood, important, and safe. And then finally, the reason, supporting the child to reflect, learn, remember, articulate, and become self-assured. It must happen in that way from the bottom up, as it coincides with how the brain develops from the bottom up. So in our classrooms and environments, we cannot be solely focusing on the top parts of the brain that go with the academic and cognitive aspects. If we don't make sure that the bottom parts of the brain are calm and supportive, it is impossible to even access the higher parts of the brain. All right, we're going to go through an activity. If you could find a partner to complete the short quiz with the questions up on the screen, take some time to do that, and then we're going to go over the answers all together and make sure everyone took in the information we learned. Thank you.